Next week, we are getting probably my most anticipated class update for Ashes of Creation. And it's for two major reasons, which I'm about to explain, so let's jump in. So the live stream is going to be a fighter preview, obviously in Ashes of Creation Alpha 2, and it's on Friday, March 29th at your usual time, which is 6 PM UK time, and I think that's 2 PM Eastern. Don't judge me, I might be wrong, there's been some clock changes. Now, unless I'm wrong, I think it's been a while since we last saw both the fighter and melee, or at least when they were shown as being the main part of the update. We last had the tank update in January 2023, and we had the basic melee attack, I think in June 2022. So it's been a while. And let me just get to one of the main reasons that I'm excited about this. The fighter is probably my most anticipated class because I'm probably going to play it. I'm going to be slightly torn between this and the tank. I'm going to experiment and just sort of decide what role I really want to fill. As far as I know, I think really if you want a tank, you probably want to be the tank class. Very original name, by the way. But I also like being a type of bruiser, you know, a melee hitter, just getting in the action, swirling around if I've got an axe, swinging my big sword, you know, I've got stuff to make up for in real life. So for me, I'm simply excited about this update because of what it is and it's my personal favorite. However, I think there's a wider reason to be anticipating this update, and that's because, as I said, we've not really seen much melee. Really, when you think about MMOs, they're sort of broken down into specific archetypes that are a little bit more than the classes in Ashes of Creation, and that is you have your tank, your healer, your range DPS, and your melee DPS. Now the range DPS often gets split into archers and rangers and then mages, and the melee DPS gets split into bruiser types, barbarian sort of like classes, and then also maybe like thief classes where you're stealthing around, that kind of stuff. For me, I'm very likely to be playing a melee class. And actually, melee for me is a lot about how the game actually feels, how the combat truly ends up feeling. If the melee is underwhelming, then for me, the game is going to be underwhelming. So what are we actually going to be looking forward to in this update? Well, as I said, it's going to be how the movement with the attacks look. For example, when we did see the basic melee attack option, my personal feeling was that it was a little bit fast and perhaps sort of didn't really feel like it was connecting in a way that I wanted it to personally. I'm not going to say it feels floaty because I obviously don't know that, but at times it sort of felt like I was watching it at 1.25 speed on YouTube. I'm intrigued if the reactions of the enemies will be a little bit more impactful. Like, will they recognize that they've been hit? Obviously, we're all going to be probably interested in the actual abilities themselves. What are they going to do? What play styles will the fighter actually offer? I'm hoping personally that they'll show off a different weapon other than the two-handed sword. Whilst the two-handed sword is very important, it would be nice to see something a little bit different. As you probably know, I'm a little bit of a New World Andy, and one thing I like about New World is the fact that you don't really just slice through a lot of enemies, and I think that can sort of start feeling a little bit hack and slash if you can do that too much. But I do remember, and it's actually on the wiki somewhere, there's a quote from Steven talking about how he wants the fighter warrior to be able to cut through enemy lines. Like, I want to be able to cut through the enemy lines, but I don't want to be like cutting through, you know, hundreds of mobs at once. I want it to be a little bit more thoughtful than that. I mean, technically, I'm talking about melee, but I do believe, and you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, if you can equip a ranged weapon, you could, in theory, be a ranged fighter. That would be pretty interesting if that's what they show off. However, personally for this one, I would rather them actually focus on melee. When I think about all the MMOs that I've played in the past, even if I've played ranged, it's often the melee that sort of defines how I feel about the game. Be it me trying to kite the melee as a ranged, or just as a melee player myself and how it feels. When I went back to Season of Discovery lately, I got very bored very quickly because of the melee combat. If we're honest, in a tab target game, the ranged is generally not that different from other games. It's really the melee for me that sets MMOs apart, and it's really the melee for me that defines the combat. If I'm honest, I did enjoy the basic melee weapon update. Yes, I was a little bit nitpicking about it being a bit fast, but I actually think it looked alright, so I'm very excited to see that progression. It's quite interesting when you think about the fighter though, and you think about what you want it to be. It's basically a sort of not full-on pure damage dealer when you think about it, because that's often reserved for maybe like a thief who's maybe wearing like less armor. It's generally somebody who can take a bit of damage but also dish out a lot of damage. But in Ashes of Creation, as far as I know, and I'm always worried about making a statement about Ashes of Creation because somebody will say in a dev video at some point they said this, but as far as I believe, armor is not class locked, which means in theory you could be a light armor fighter, which you have to assume would just be very good at damage. And you would assume that the whole purpose of a light armor fighter would be to get in there and kill quickly. And for me, it's going to be really interesting to see how the fighter differentiates itself as a damage dealer. Anyway, I've rambled quite a bit there about pretty much nothing. The update's coming in a week. When we see it, we'll obviously talk about it. For now, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. If you want to really support me, then becoming a Patreon is the best way. You can always come and talk to me about this on Twitch. I'm streaming New World at, like, what can I say, dead game, whatever. I enjoy it right now, okay? Don't hate me, it is what it is. However, I will talk about anything there, it's fine. If you want to come and maybe play with me in Alpha 2 or beyond, then make sure you get in the Discord and join the guild. There's no requirements. If you want in, you're in. I hope you have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.